Okay, so you want to get smart on a topic and you want to do it fast, right? Like no time wasted. You just want the good stuff. You're in the right place. This is the deep dive. Today we are going deep on something that you might be considering, you might be working with, or maybe you're just curious about. The role of the assistant coordinator.
And we've actually got a great collection of common interview questions and answers that are designed to help people prep for this role.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
we can really break this down and figure out what this role is all about.
I love that because I think this is one of those roles that can be a little bit mysterious, right?
Yeah.
Like what exactly does an assistant coordinator
Yeah,
do? Where
exactly.
do they fit into a team?
Yeah.
So our mission today is to pull out those essential skills and the real-world responsibilities and even the mindset that's needed to really nail this assistant coordinator position.
Absolutely.
So whether this is a potential career path for you or you work with assistant coordinators every day or you're just fascinated by how teams actually work,
Yeah,
you're in the right place.
that's right.
Okay, let's dive in. And I think a great place to start is with project coordination skills
Yeah.
because often the assistant coordinator is seen as the glue that holds a project together.
You know what I think is so interesting is that the best assistant coordinators I've seen actually set up systems that are so good the team can kind of self-manage.
That's interesting.
So they're actually freed up to focus on the bigger picture, anticipating problems rather than getting bogged down in the day-to-day.
So it's not just about like checking the boxes and making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to.
Right.
It's about creating a framework where things can move forward kind of smoothly on their own. I
Exactly.
like that a lot.
How
And our source material, really highlights the importance of things like managing tasks, delegating effectively, and keeping everyone on track.
Absolutely. And when we think about managing those tasks, it goes beyond just assigning them out.
Right.
It's making sure that everyone understands what the goals are.
Yeah, that's so important.
We've got to make sure the objectives are really clear because that's the foundation of any successful project. And then from there, we break it down into tasks with realistic timelines
Right.
so we can actually achieve those goals.
And then I think this is where communication comes in, right?
Huge.
Because one of the example answers that we were looking at really stressed strong communication is so important to keep everyone in the loop. And it's not just about sending out updates.
Nope.
It's about making sure people actually understand what their role is and how their work connects to the bigger picture.
And what's really interesting is the best assistant coordinators I've seen are always thinking ahead.
Okay.
So they're not just thinking about what's happening right now. They're thinking about, okay, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
What are the roadblocks? What are the potential problems? And they're coming up with backup plans, contingency plans, so that if something does happen, if there's a hiccup, it doesn't derail the entire project.
It's like that proactive thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, nowadays, having a good understanding of project management tools is absolutely essential
Oh, yeah.
because you need to be able to track things efficiently, report on progress. Things like Gantt charts, for example, in tools like Asana,
Yeah.
can really give you that visual representation of, okay, this task depends on that task, so we can actually manage those risks proactively.
Okay. So for our listeners out there, what's the takeaway here? When it comes to project coordination,
Mhm.
it's not just about reacting to things as they come up.
Right.
It's about putting a plan in place that's really well communicated and it's resilient enough to handle those bumps in the road.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, a role like this often involves a lot of juggling. So let's talk about multitasking.
Multitasking. We're thinking about the assistant coordinator at the center of all these moving parts. They are pretty much guaranteed to be handling multiple tasks all at once.
Yeah, I would think so.
And interviewers want to know, can you do that without losing your cool? Can you stay organized? Can you manage your time effectively, even when things get really, really busy?
And I love the example that our source gives about coordinating marketing tasks during a product launch.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got social media, you've got press releases going out, you might have an event to plan.
Absolutely.
It's like all these things happening at the same time.
That's a lot.
And what really stood out to me in that scenario is that having those structured systems in place, those processes is essential.
Right.
Project management software is not just a nice to have.
It's a must.
It's the backbone
Yeah.
of keeping all of those different work streams organized. And then, of course, regular team communication so that everyone is always clear on what the priorities are.
Absolutely. Keeping that shared understanding, even when things are changing really rapidly.
And I love that in that example, the launch stayed on schedule despite all of those moving pieces.
It's a testament to effective multitasking.
It really is.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about multitasking in this context, it's not just about doing a lot of things at once.
Right.
It's about having that organized and communicative approach
Sure.
to really manage all that complexity.
Exactly.
Now, that leads us really well into talking about prioritization.
Prioritization.
Yeah.
Because when you have that big list of tasks and all those things coming at you, how do you decide what to focus on first?
Yeah.
And for an assistant coordinator, it's not just about managing their own workload. It's often about helping the entire team focus on the right things, the
Right.
most important things.
And our source material really stresses that interviewers are looking for strategic thinking here.
Yeah.
It's not just about, okay, what's the loudest request or what feels the most urgent on the surface. It's about, okay, what are our goals
Right.
and what will have the biggest impact if we get it done?
And one of the tools that was mentioned in an example answer that I really like is the Eisenhower matrix.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So this helps you categorize tasks into 4 quadrants.
Okay.
You have urgent and important.
Right.
Those are the things that you need to do right now. Then you have not urgent, but important.
Okay.
So these are things you need to schedule to do later.
Got it.
Then you have urgent, but not important. These are things you might be able to delegate
Okay.
to someone else. And then finally, you have not urgent and not important.
Mm-hmm.
These are probably distractions. You can just get rid of them.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea, too, of task dependencies,
Absolutely.
right? Sometimes you can't even start on one task until another one is done.
Right.
So being able to see those relationships and understand those dependencies is really key to a smooth workflow.
And it's not a one and done kind of thing.
Right.
You have to revisit your priorities regularly because things change.
Absolutely.
New information comes and deadlines move around, so you need to be adaptable.
So listeners, think about using a prioritization framework.
That's right.
If this is something that you struggle with, that could be a huge game changer. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about critical decision making.
Now, what's interesting is that even though this is an assistant coordinator role, it often involves making decisions. Sometimes pretty important decisions, often with limited time.
Right.
So interviewers want to know, how do you make those decisions? How do you weigh the different options?
Right.
Are you willing to take ownership? And how is your judgment when the pressure is on?
Yeah.
Because it kind of gives them insight into your leadership potential as well.
Okay.
Do you have what it takes to step up and make the call?
I like that.
Mm.
And the example that we have in our source material, I think, really illustrates this well. There's a delay with a key supplier, and it's threatening to derail a major project deadline. So the assistant coordinator has to decide, okay, do we try to find a new supplier,
Tough call.
which could increase costs?
Yeah.
Or do we risk missing this deadline and potentially damaging our relationship with the client?
Huge stakes.
High stakes. And in this example, the assistant coordinator decides to find a new supplier. And they are able to meet the deadline, and they keep that client trust. So it really shows the importance of good judgment in those critical moments.
Absolutely. Because they're weighing those short-term costs
Right.
against the long-term impact on client relationships and the reputation of the company.
Exactly. So the takeaway here, I think, is that being able to make those decisions, even when there's uncertainty and you're feeling pressured, is so vital to keeping projects on track and those client relationships strong.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to the human side of things a little bit.
Yeah.
Dealing with difficult team members.
Yes. Because in any team environment, conflict is almost inevitable.
Right.
So interviewers want to understand, okay, how do you deal with that? What are your interpersonal skills? How do you approach those tricky situations? Because as an assistant coordinator, you're often in the middle of all that.
Right.
You need to navigate those challenges while keeping the team productive and keeping that professional atmosphere.
And the example of a team member who's consistently missing deadlines,
Yeah.
I think that's something that so many people can relate to.
Absolutely. Happens all the time.
And the approach that's highlighted in our source material is so good.
Yeah.
Having that private conversation, focusing on understanding why those deadlines are being missed.
Right.
It's about trying to find the root cause,
Exactly.
not just blaming.
And then working with that individual to create a plan.
Yeah.
To manage their time better, maybe setting up check-in points so you can offer some support.
Yeah.
It's a really proactive and solution-oriented approach.
So it's the power of open communication
Yeah.
to address those team challenges
Exactly.
and ultimately improve how the team functions.
Yeah.
So the big takeaway, I think, for our listeners is that when you're dealing with those tricky team dynamics, Approach it with empathy.
Absolutely.
Be open, communicate,
Yeah,
and focus on finding those solutions together. That's often the best way forward.
that's right.
Now let's talk about something that really underpins any successful team effort:
Okay.
effective communication strategies.
Because communication is at the heart of team cohesion.
It is.
And it's not just about transmitting information.
Right.
It's about creating understanding,
Yeah.
making sure everyone is on the same page. Interviewers want to see that you've thought about how you're going to manage communication within a team so that everyone is informed, everyone is engaged, and everyone is working towards the same goals.
And the example answer that we looked at touches on some really key things. First of all, it emphasizes that clarity and consistency in your messaging is so important.
Huge.
Making sure people understand what you're saying and that you're reliable with that information.
Absolutely.
And then active listening,
So important.
right? Really paying attention to what other people are saying and valuing their input.
Absolutely.
And then using a variety of communication channels.
Right.
Email meetings, project management software.
Because different types of information are suited to different mediums.
Right.
And then creating opportunities for people to give feedback.
Yeah.
Because that's how you improve how the team communicates overall.
So the takeaway here is that effective communication is intentional.
It is.
It's something that you practice. You focus on being clear, you're a good listener, you use the right tools, and you seek out that feedback to really build a more connected and a more efficient team.
That's right.
Okay, let's think about something that is almost certainly going to happen in any project.
Uh-oh.
Last-minute changes.
That's right.
So how do you handle it when those plans need to shift?
Yeah.
And interviewers are going to want to see, how flexible are you? How quickly can you adapt? And how do you maintain your composure when things don't go according to plan?
Yeah.
Because that's how you minimize disruptions.
Absolutely.
And the example that we have here highlights the importance of communicating those changes to the team right away,
Right.
and then quickly adjusting timelines and resources.
Absolutely.
And again, project management tools are so valuable for keeping track of all of that.
And that positive attitude. That solution-oriented approach is so important because your reaction to change can influence how the whole team reacts.
Absolutely.
So staying calm and proactive can actually help keep morale up when things get stressful.
So for our listeners, when those last-minute changes come up, stay flexible, communicate clearly and promptly with your team, and keep that positive mindset.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's delve into one more really important element of successful projects:
Okay.
ensuring team alignment.
And it's fascinating because the assistant coordinator can really impact whether everyone is on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
So interviewers want to know, how are you going to do that?
Right.
Because it's so crucial for achieving the project goals.
And our example answer really reinforces the importance of that clear and consistent communication
Yeah.
right from the very beginning.
Setting those expectations.
Yeah.
So everyone knows what they're responsible for, what the role is on the project.
Having regular team meetings is highlighted too.
Yeah.
To discuss progress, talk about any roadblocks,
That's right.
and maybe make some adjustments as you go.
Yeah.
Using a shared platform or a shared tool is also really important for keeping information transparent and updated,
Absolutely.
and then encouraging that feedback from the team.
So important.
Right. Goes back to what we were talking about with communication.
Absolutely.
That open dialogue and continuous improvement.
And then recognizing those individual contributions.
Yeah.
Celebrating those wins so that everyone feels valued.
Yeah. So when it comes to team alignment, it's an ongoing effort. It requires that proactive communication.
It does.
You've got to have those clearly defined roles
Absolutely.
and build a team culture where everyone feels heard and valued.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something that is so essential in modern coordination:
Okay.
technology.
Ah, yes. Because technology is woven into pretty much everything we do these days.
Right.
And the assistant coordinator role is no exception. Interviewers want to know, are you comfortable using technology? But can you use it strategically?
Yes.
Can you use it to improve efficiency? Can you use it to enhance communication within the team?
And the example answer here gives some great illustrations of that. Implementing something like Asana to delegate and track tasks.
Absolutely.
Using Google Workspace to collaborate on documents and communicate effectively. Even something like Doodle polls to just schedule meetings easily.
Right.
So it's about having that proactive mindset of using technology to solve those common coordination challenges.
Exactly.
So the takeaway here is be familiar with those technologies that are relevant to your work
Mm.
and be willing to identify and implement new tools as needed to really enhance those coordination abilities.
Absolutely.
Okay. Last but not least, let's tackle one more situation that I think many coordinators will find themselves in at some point.
Okay.
Managing projects with tight deadlines.
Ah, yes. This is the real test.
It is.
When the pressure is on, interviewers want to see how do you operate in those high-stakes situations.
Oh.
It really assesses your ability to manage time, prioritize, and make those quick decisions when you need to.
And stepping in to manage an event with only 2 weeks to go.
Wow.
That is a classic high-pressure scenario.
It is.
And the first step that's highlighted here is so smart. Organize that team meeting right away. Get a clear picture of where things stand. Identify those critical areas that need attention and then divide up the responsibilities.
Right. Get everyone on board and clear on what they need to do.
Exactly. And then those frequent check-ins.
Absolutely.
In this example, daily check-ins
Daily.
to make sure everyone is on track and any problems are addressed right away.
Right, because there's no time to waste.
And the fact that they were able to execute that event successfully despite that super tight timeline just shows how important those fundamental project management skills are.
Yeah, absolutely crucial.
So when you're managing projects with tight deadlines, it comes down to a few key things. That rapid assessment of the situation,
Right.
clear and decisive delegation,
Absolutely.
and that consistent and focused communication to keep everyone moving in the right direction.
That's right.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the assistant coordinator role,
Yeah,
we've covered a lot of ground.
we have.
Looking at those common interview scenarios and really getting those expert-backed approaches to these different situations.
Absolutely.
And I think the examples that we've discussed offer some really valuable insights into the skills and the mindset that contribute to success in this really dynamic position.
Absolutely. Whether you're considering this career path, you're working with assistant coordinators, you're just interested in how teams work, having a good understanding of these core areas is so important.
It is.
And it gives you a really strong foundation. So thinking about those project coordination skills, multitasking, prioritization, communication, problem solving.
Absolutely.
These are all essential ingredients.
They are. And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
How might these principles of effective coordination apply to other team-based efforts?
That's a good question.
Right. So maybe it's not a formal assistant coordinator role,
Right.
but think about those other situations where you're working with a group of people.
Yeah.
Maybe you're organizing a community event.
Right.
Maybe it's a family project.
Yeah.
Maybe you're volunteering for a cause.
Absolutely.
Could a more structured and a more communicative approach be beneficial there?
It's something worth thinking about.
It is.
Yeah,
It really is.
I think so.
Awesome. Well, that's the deep dive for today.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.